Today I'm talking about prophecy and temperament, and also a little bit from Quantum Torah website, as well as some Torah from the interpretations from the Torah, a little bit about healing. So Rabbi Kaikoff from Brooklyn, New York, Flatbush, says that when we get angry, it causes our wisdom to depart. We act for leading is a way to be in charge. When we act where we end up actually furious and hateful, we're not in charge anymore. When we think of Moshe, who's maybe going to be a little bit of the theme today, he was a stern person. He was the first leader of Israel. He was a prophet, right? And he felt worthless, even though he was a good shepherd. He had been, the general for Yisro, his father-in-law, in Midian. After he fled from Egypt, he had been raised in Paro's royal household because he was rescued from the river during a decree when all little boys had to be murdered. It was because Paro had a vision from his prophets that the one who would overtake him or overthrow him, not to take over his place, but to take him out of his place, was going to be a Jewish boy. So he wanted all the Jewish boys to die. Moshe lived because his parents still had him, and his mother hid him in the river. Paro's daughter, Basia, found him. It's a whole miraculous story that she even brought him into the palace, and he grew up not in slavery, but in royalty. Then he saw an Egyptian hurting a Jew cruelly, and he looked through him and he saw that nothing good will come out of this person, and he killed him. That doesn't give us license to kill, but he ran away to Midian because Paro said, that's it. There was a few little signs, that's it. And while he was in Midian, he married the daughter of Yisro, the chief priest who had given up idol worship. He had daughters who nobody would touch because that was a town of idol worship, a city of idol worship. And they lost respect for their quote-unquote leader when he said that I can't serve these idols anymore or engage in these practices. And when Moshe came, he drew water for the daughters for their sheep, which no one else was willing to do at that time. So besides for growing up in the palace, he could get angry and worked up. He felt he still felt he didn't deserve to be in charge. So we see there's this, he understood when you get angry, worked up, you're not in charge. And Moshe was able to kill with his hands, his tongue, and his eyes. With his eyes to look, with his tongue what he spoke, and with his hands. He didn't understand why God needed a person to take the Jews out of Egypt. Hashem, God, is non-questionable. He had to not care what anyone thought for Hashem's sake. He had an argument with Hashem. I don't want to be the one to take the Jews out. Hashem gives a leader based on the people's tolerance. Serach, who is from Asher's lineage, confirmed that Moshe was the chosen one, even though there were many other great prophets. They were many other great people. When we understand prophecy versus halacha means the way. It's to study the way. Prophecy is, in Hebrew, we call it nivuah. It's related to niva, which is like the speaking what you see. You see something different, you speak it. So Malachi, a later prophet who took Torah to the age of post-prophecy during Shimon HaTzadik, there wasn't prophecy then, he taught the one who took the Torah out of that age, Shimon HaTzadik. The world stands on three pillars, Torah, Tzedakah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Some say, elsewhere it says, justice, peace, and truth in the Pirkei Avos. But we could say Tzedakah is justice or righteousness. Torah is truth, and Gemilas Chasadim is like peace. You make peace. You share your peace with everyone. Shimon HaTzadik's fire lasted and lasted. The menorah, he lit the menorah, it lasted 24 hours, in the physical world as well. And the sacrifices that were given on the altar, the coals didn't need to be fed all day. So he had a fire that came into this physical world and lasted. He was the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, 40 years. On Yom Kippur, the red rope, which indicated whether the sins were forgiven, always turned white, as mentioned, it indicated. And the Goral, the lot for the two goats, whether it was given to God or the sort of the devil's advocate in a way, or not the devil's advocate, but like the portion for the other side, for Azazel, the one, so that the accuser, the persecutor, so they won't try to find things wrong with the Jews. When he met him, Alexander the Great, the king of the world, bowed down right away, Shimon HaTzadik, and he said, I had a dream where Shimon HaTzadik appeared before me, telling me I was going to be victorious. At that time, Shimon HaTzadik was in his 30s. Everyone's like, this is the king? And bowing down to this man he never met, and he recognized him when he saw him. That year, Shimon HaTzadik died. He said he knew, because a white-clad figure had always joined him and brought him into the Holy of Holies when he was the priest and escorted him out. But this time it was a black-clad figure, and he joined him, but he didn't escort him out. And 7 days after Sukkot, which you have Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and then the next holiday is Sukkot. Very shortly after, he became very ill and he died. His two sons, what happened? His older son tricked the younger one to wear a leather tunic wrapped in a bow. On his first day at service, he embarrassed him. It was the wrong clothing, claiming it was on purpose. They wanted to kill him, and he ran away to Egypt. And he built an idolatry altar to Baal Ashterot. That's one version of the story. Another version of the story is the younger son tricked the older, who then fled to Egypt to offer sacrifices, idolatrous. And the third version is that the younger son tricked the older, who fled to Egypt to offer sacrifices on an altar made for Hashem in a replica of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which is how he fulfilled. This is the fulfilling of the prophecy from Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, that an altar and pillars will be built for Hashem to sanctify him even in Egypt. And in terms of Yisro, it says that his descendant, he was from Midian, was Balak, king of Moab, whose descendant is Ruth, whose descendant is Boaz, whose descendant is David, whose descendant is Mashiach. The other line of David was from Yisrael, who had Judah, who had Peretz, and eventually it'll also, Yisrael is Yaakov, it'll also lead through David to Mashiach. So Mashiach can be understood more when we see what it's like in terms of a match, lighting, right? And then lighting many candles. One human who reaches enlightenment can potentially change the world forever. That's not even necessarily a Jewish idea. I mean, there's gurus who think these things, and that's why they set themselves on fire to light everybody else on fire, as well as many. Sometimes it could be dozens, if not hundreds. Can you imagine one match lighting? And we mentioned with Shimon HaTzadik, he stayed lit. He stayed lit. We call this in English now, stay lit. Question, what if not Shlomo, but another descendant of David will be the line of Mashiach embodied? So then we learn that Bathsheba was told that it would be her son that would overtake the throne. Not overtake, but take over the throne after David. And they had a whole big scandal where another son tried to become king, and David had to quickly anoint at 12 years old, before David died in his elder years, he had to anoint Shlomo to be king. So that's how we know that it wasn't another son, it was Shlomo. And just to give a little context, we have Moshe's father is Amram. And we're going to talk here about number 137. Moshe's father lived till 137. And Amram, and then Levi, Ishmael lived till 137. This is the son of Abraham, his first son. And Levi, Amram is from the lineage of Levi, from Yaakov, Moshe comes from the Levi lineage. Levi also lived 137 years. The numerical value of 137 is Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the mystical teachings of Judaism. It's to receive. Makiblot, which is to mean opposite, has the same root, kabel. So something opposite means you now have a receiver. That's why we might say one opposite the other is not a bad thing. You're not completely alone. You have someone to hear you, to see you. Then we have the fine in mathematics. This is from the Quantum Torah website. I said the fine structure constant value. This is a dimensionless number used in math. It's not a number. It's a value. It's in physics. It goes through and across physics calculations that have differing units. It's a fine structure. In other words, 1/137. No one can figure out why that number is it, and relates to the absorption of a photon by an electron, matter. So photon is light, and then you have electron, matter. It's like you can go across, it's like instead of converting things to the same units, it can grow across different units that don't have a conversion unit. And this is when we think of the light and the matter. In Kabbalah, we know you have light and vessel. You could say they're opposite. One is filling the vessel, one is receiving. And this is, in Hebrew, we call the endless light, or the Or Ein Sof, the light without end. And this is when we think of the electromagnetic interaction between charged particles. One sort of takes, in other words, one electron sort of jumps out into the other one and it sort of holds it, or one electron jumps out and is sort of held. Doesn't matter which way. And finally, I did a practice with a friend of mine. I would say a recovery friend, somebody I was in recovery with, meetings, that when we heal our wounded feminine, this receiver, this one that's receiving from the other, we have to stop clinging. We have to learn to self-soothe when it's not there and we feel that absence. We also shouldn't destroy our needs so that someone will love us. We don't have to become less so that someone will hold us. Either way, right? And we can start giving ourselves confidence, patience, reassurance from that place, and receive and appreciate without controlling demands. In other words, let's say you want all of it, but it's not available, so you try to make yourself less in order to receive the wrong portion. Then also, instead of expecting the man to, we often might say we want the man to be outside. Actually, in this case, instead of expecting the man to take over, it's receiving the man, okay? And healing the wounded masculine is courage, acceptance, courage. And once you're in there, accepting the situation and responsibility, not to just leave without responding to the situation or taking into account. And then also unchanging love without expectations. So depending on the receiver, but still giving the natural love or the natural light without adjusting every time the receiver adjusts. Although taking into account the receiver, and that's built on respect. So I'm going to stop this video. It was a beautiful Passover for me and anyone who celebrated. I hope that it was transformative and amazing for you too. Okay, bye.